Last week, the Pope made a video address to the 10th All-Russian Catholic Youth Assembly in St Petersburg on Friday, during which he urged the young people to view themselves as the descendants of the Russian Empire. He said to the young people, quote, "Never forget your heritage. You are the descendants of great Russia, the great Russia of saints, rulers, the great Russia of Peter the Great, Catherine II, that empire, educated, great culture and great humanity. Never give up on this heritage. You are the descendants of the great Mother Russia. Step forward with it. And thank you. Thank you for your way of being, and for your way of being Russian." End quote. Since then, the Pope has come under fire from Ukraine and the West, who saw these comments as similar to the imperialist propaganda that was quoted by Putin himself. For example, last year, the Russian President Vladimir Putin compared himself to Peter the Great during an exhibition dedicated to the first Russian emperor, using the comparison to justify Russia's invasion of Ukraine. Quote, "Peter the Great waged the Great Northern War for 21 years. On the face of it, he was at war with Sweden, taking something away from it. However, he was not taking away anything, he was returning. This is how it was." End quote. He added that it didn't matter that European countries didn't recognize Peter the Great's seizure of territory by force. The head of the Ukrainian Greek Catholic Church said in a statement that Peter the Great and Catherine the Great are, quote, "the worst examples of imperialism and extreme Russian nationalism," warning that the Pope's words could be perceived as support for the nationalism and imperialism that has caused the war in Ukraine today. End quote. Since then, the Vatican has rejected this interpretation of the Pope's words, and instead clarified with the following statement, quote, "The Pope intended to encourage young people to preserve and promote all that is positive in the great cultural and Russian spirituality, and certainly not to exalt imperialist logic and government personalities, cited to indicate some historical periods of reference." End quote. While we assume that the Pope was not making overt statements in favour of the Russian war with Ukraine, his statements nevertheless demonstrate his respect for the cultural and religious heritage of Great Mother Russia, as can be seen particularly through the lens of the Greek Orthodox Church. The Pope was encouraging the young people at the conference to view with pride their heritage as the Eastern Orthodox centre of the world, under rulers like Peter the Great. This is not the first time that the Pope has made seemingly controversial comments about the war in Ukraine, having refused to denounce Putin by name and seemingly blame NATO for the conflict as well. But the fact that the Pope is cozying up to the religious heritage of Russia is an amazing sign of the times. Only a few decades ago, the Soviet Union squashed the religious historical identity of Mother Russia. When Vladimir Lenin came to power in Russia in 1917, he held the Marxist view that once capitalism was abolished, religion would likewise wither away. It was a slight twist on the classic secularization theory, which held that as societies modernize, people lose faith. For Lenin, and for his successor Joseph Stalin, atheism was not something that required much thought. It is simply the absence of religion, and would come naturally in due time as the Soviet Union developed into a modern society. However, this all changed. In a post-Soviet Russia, Orthodox Christianity gives the country a legitimacy that it was an ancient polity with a millennial pedigree, giving it moral legitimacy, according to Smolkin. Putin can tout orthodoxy as the state religion, although the reality is that very few of the population actually attend church. A writer called Zubovich, who writes for a website called Religion and Politics, said the following, quote, "In 1991, just after the collapse of the USSR, about 2/3 of Russians claimed no religious affiliation. Today, 71% of Russians identify as Orthodox. One can now see priests giving sermons on televisions, encounter religious processions in St Petersburg, and watch citizens lining up for holy water in Moscow. Even Moscow's Darwin Museum features a Christmas tree during the holidays. President Vladimir Putin has encouraged this revival, and it has also benefited him both at home and abroad." End quote. We read throughout the scriptures of a Babylonian power that would be perpetuated throughout the ages right up until the time of Christ's coming. For example, we read of the destruction of Babylon the Great in Revelation 17 verses 14 and 15, when the Lamb, that is, the Lord Jesus Christ, is sitting upon the throne in the kingdom age. The same thing is depicted in Daniel 7, with the fourth Roman beast oppressing the holy ones right up until the Ancient of Days comes to the earth and sets up his throne. This fourth beast is a representative of the kingdom of men right up until the return of Christ. A final example of this same phenomenon can be seen in Daniel chapter 2, describing the famous image that the terrified King Nebuchadnezzar saw in his dream. The iron legs of this image correspond to the Roman Empire. The feet of the image are a mixture of iron and miry clay, demonstrating the presence of a Roman power right up until the time when the stone hits the standing image on its feet. The two legs of the image explain how the Roman Empire would split into two halves. Before this split, or division of the empire, Emperor Constantine in around 300 CE moved the capital of the Roman Empire from Rome to Constantinople, or modern-day Istanbul, demonstrating the shifting centre of gravity in the Roman world. Not long after Constantine's death, the empire split in half, with the western leg being governed from Rome and the eastern leg being governed from Constantinople. The Eastern Roman Empire survived for another 1,000 years after Constantine's death, only collapsing in 1453 with the invasion of Constantinople by the Ottoman Turks, a section of history which is described for us in the 6th trumpet in the book of Revelation. But this history is a vital part of modern Russia's heritage. This can be seen, for example, in the Oxford Slavonic Papers, which were written by a man called Dmitry Obolensky, who was a lecturer at Oxford University. He writes that Byzantium, that is Constantinople, Istanbul, the Eastern Roman Empire, Byzantium, is the main source of Russian civilization. The continuing strength of the Byzantine inheritance in modern Russia has asserted itself again and again in the form of the Orthodox Christian faith. It is highly significant that Russia entered the European family of nations through her conversion to Christianity, for which she is indebted to Byzantium. The heritage of East Rome is the main channel through which Russia became a European nation. Byzantium, or Constantinople, or Istanbul, was Russia's gateway to Europe. Byzantium brought Russia 5 gifts: her religion, her law, her view of the world, her art, and her writing." End quote. This is why Brother Graham Pierce wrote in the 1970s that, quote, "We ought not to fix our eyes entirely on the papacy as the essence of Babylon the Great. Babylonish qualities belong to the East as well as to the West. Russia is truly the heir to the old Roman Empire. We see Russia as a nation prepared by her long history to play her part in the final brief revival of the power of the Roman Empire, the fourth beast of Daniel, when the saints slay the beast and take the kingdom." End quote. Russia's religious revival since the collapse of the Soviet Union, and then also following that the Pope's comments both this week's and in the past years, are an exciting sign of the times that we are living in, as we wait to see how the Roman apostasy will come to breathe with both its lungs once again, in both the East and the West. This has been Daniel Blackburn joining you for this week's edition of Bible in the News.